Welcome, my friends, to the Sage of Quay Radio Hour, your home for free and critical thinking, and I'm your host, Mike Williams. Tonight, Ole Dammegard returns to the show. Ole will take us through the anomalies and patterns of Charlottesville and Barcelona, which are indicative of two more staged events in a long line of false flags engineered by the controllers. And so, without further ado, here's the conversation with Ole. Ole, welcome back to the show, and we're going to talk about some recent events, and I'm going to step out on a limb, but I don't think it's stepping out too far to call them staged events because, as you and I have discussed in the past, there's just a pattern, there's a template, it's the same old, over and over and over again, and hopefully more and more people are seeing this. I'm really hopeful that people are beginning to recognize these as for what they are, engineered and orchestrated events. So I think you wanted to talk about Barcelona and Charlottesville, but we can talk about any others that you'd like to talk about. But where'd you want to start?
I would say Charlottesville would be a good place to start. And as usual, I want to emphasize that it's very important not to jump to any conclusions, but to look at the evidence, look at what is being presented, what actually happened, who carried it out, and who benefited from the whole thing. And so just like when you create a bomb, you have to use different chemicals, put it together in a certain way. Once that's done, the only thing that is missing for an explosion is just one spark, one tiny little spark, and the whole thing will just boom. And when you look at Charlottesville, what actually happened there was like a bomb exploding there. And also how the whole thing was, we're going to look into it, was created by putting together these different forces like chemicals, so that the only thing that was missing was this spark. And this spark in this incident was this car that drove into a crowd. And that was the thing that made the whole thing explode. So I think it is very important to look at that exact event, that spark, and see what actually happened there. Now, I just wish that I could show you the photos, but many of these photos and videos are so, you can find them anywhere online and so on. So I hope that people can follow. So the official story is that there was this big crowd that was part of demonstrating in Charlottesville. The whole thing was about taking down some old American statues and things in the South. But when you look at it, it seems like the agenda was to start there and then continue to sort of destabilize American history, sort of, so to speak. But anyway, they were walking up a little street. There was an intersection between Water Street and 4th Street in Charlottesville. And when you look at the filmed footage, there's one thing that is always very confusing, I think, the difference between when you see something filmed and when you're actually there. And the difference is that it is so much smaller in real life. It looks like the street, like the distance is big, but normally I've been to more or less all locations here in Europe and in some in the US as well, where these operations have been carried out. And once you get there, it's like, oh, so tiny, so small, and so easily controlled, because that is the key word. If this was a staged event, then they need the area under their control, the whole part, closed off streets, buildings nearby where they can prepare everything. Normally this is in parking garages or libraries, as we've discussed in many earlier events and so on. And also to be able to shut off the area without anyone really knowing from the outside what is going on. So it's said that they were on their way, this group were on their way to this rally. The rally was in a park, but not in the exact direction where this group was walking. So it is a bit strange that they were exactly there. They should have been further west towards this area. But anyway, they were walking up there. There were some reporters, photographers, everything. And then suddenly this Dodge Challenger from 2010 just comes and steps on it right into the crowd and hits several people, kills one woman, and then reverses very quickly out when the crowd start getting very aggressive and start hitting the car with bats and so on. He reverses out in high speed and leaves the area. Then he's seen driving around, I believe, for about 1 hour before he's arrested by the police. So very brutal incidents, but was what we saw really what happened. And this is where you need to ask yourself, have to look at different camera angles, who actually took the photos, who took a photo from up above. Why was there a drone filming at this exact point? Because there was actually nothing really going on when this happened before the car came. So I would like to ask people to look at the different videos on YouTube, where you can see from different angles where this car comes and just steps on it right into the crowd. Very violent indeed, and awful if what we're being told is true. So first of all, Charlottesville, it sounds for people outside the US, and I think in the US as well, okay, it's a American city, but so what? Well, the thing is, when you look at where Charlottesville is located, it is located just a stone throw away from Washington, D.C., which is where the White House is. It is located just a stone throw away from the CIA's headquarters in Langley, and it's also just a stone throw away from Chantilly, where the Bilderberg meeting was held now for the 4th time at the Marriott Hotel this year as well in June. So we're looking at a town or a city that is very close to being sort of the backyard for these big boys playing here. Also, when you start looking at what actually happened, it is very strange. I'm still confused about what actually went down here. Were real people injured? Were this a real attack? Was it a staged attack? And so on. Let's go into some details.
Okay.
Like, the car was a Dodge Challenger from 2010. It was sort of a gray, greenish type of color, very difficult color to almost at the dark olive type of thing. When you look at the guy that has been blamed to do it on his Facebook page, where you can see the car and so on. And so we look at the map, the area. Like I said, it was on 4th Street. That's the small, narrow street where the car was coming down and then reversing back again. And then the street that it crosses, which is Water Street. When this all happened, there was a drone that was filming this intersection, but the drone is not moving. It's totally static. And it is an exact angle so that you cannot see the impact of the car, because the car is actually hitting another car from behind, and then that car is hitting a maroon van in front of it. So there's 3 different cars involved in it on 4th Street.
Yeah, the drone was blocked by the rooftop, right?
It is blocked exactly on it's a perfect blockage so that you can actually not see anything. The only thing you can see from that drone is that you can see the maroon van being pushed forward or rolling forward into the middle of this intersection. That's the only thing you see, and how people are spreading it around. But that drone footage shows us quite a lot of other stuff that is interesting, because here in this intersection, it's filled with people, but there's nothing, no one in either directions when you look to the sides. These other streets are totally empty, and then you got from all directions, they are blockages, or they're cars that are there, sort of it looks like they're just standing there waiting for the crowd to move away, but at the same time, they are also blocking anyone from entering this area. You will see that if you continue 4th Street down on the other side of the intersection, there's an underpass under a railroad, which is a perfect place where this street could very easily be blocked off on the other side. And on some still photos, you can see in the background, there's these metal barriers that they use, like rock concerts, on the other side, blocking that one so that no one can come in there. If you go the street down, I think that must be east, you will see that right after this intersection, there's a sharp bend where also this street could very easily be shut off there so that nobody would enter into the area, but it wouldn't be visible on these photos or this footage. Then you have right here on the corner as well of Water Street and 4th Street, right on the corner, there's a big building, and that building is actually, once again, a parking garage, where when you see some of the footage of the impact itself, it's taken from an angle upward going down. I'm talking about that photo where you can see this poor woman in a turquoise top being on the hood of vehicle number 2. And that photo is taken from that parking garage. That would also be the place if I was the one planning this whole thing as a stage event. That would be one of the reasons why this intersection would have been chosen, because that is where they've got access to a place where they can do all the preparations with no one from the outside seeing what's going on, where they can park all their vehicles, prepare pyrotechnics if that is needed, makeup, crisis actors, all of these things, all of that could be inside that building. And then right on the corner, coming out into the intersection is the exit for pedestrians, sort of out of the parking garage, right into that intersection. So you could have like 200 people in the parking garage, no one sees anything, and then go, everyone out, within a few minutes, everything could be prepared, the streets blocked off, and boom, action. You also have more or less across the street from this parking garage, just 100 feet down, 100 yards down the road, there's a live theater as well, a theater building with makeup facilities, I'm sure catering, bathrooms, all of these type of things. I'm not sure if that was used, but that would have been perfect. It's just right across on the other side of the street. So when you look at this area, it could fit very well into being chosen for this reason. Then if you look at, there's video footage, but there's also still photos, very high quality photos taken by somebody in the street. There's especially one where you can see that the car has the brake lights on, and then the crowd is sort of running to the sides in front of it. But when you compare that photo with the video footage, they don't match up. For one thing, you can see that on the video footage, the vehicle is moving at all times and just more or less accelerating the last bit. Here we have that the vehicle, you can even see that the print on the tires, meaning that the car is standing still. It's not moving. You can also see the exhaust from the car showing that this car is standing still. With the brake lights that he's not using in the video, it's there. So you will also see that in front of this car, there's not the two other vehicles that he crashed into, as far as I can see, are not there. Neither are this black pickup, Toyota pickup, that was standing next to the car when it. So the signs and so on that are on this other famous still photo where you see that where this man has been hit by the car, a black man in a white t-shirt and shorts, red shoes, and is falling off the back of the car. All of the signs that are in front on that photo that would have been taken just a few seconds later, they're not there. So I would strongly suggest this photo and the video footage not from the same time.
Yeah, the guy that was thrown up in the air behind the car, Ole, it was kind of interesting because if he had come down on his back the way he should have, the way the photo was showing, then he probably would not have gotten up off the ground. He would have been very, very hurt. Yet we saw pictures afterwards where he was leaning up against another car.
Yeah, he's sitting, but actually I thought that as well, but I found out later now that you can see him on the video footage behind when the car is going in through the crowd. You can see him rolling off the back of the car, and then he jumps to the right and on top of the hood of this black Toyota pickup, and then jumps down on the other side.
Yeah. But the point being is, you would think that he would have been a lot more hurt than how it played out. I mean, that was my thought, at least.
No, I totally agree with you. And you will also see there's another guy in the crowd. When you see the cars coming in, you can see there's one guy, he's sort of standing, jumping, just like sometimes stuntman does, because the importance for a stuntman when you're hit by a car from the front of the car is that you need to get up in the air so that you land on top of the hood. Then you can roll over the window and down over the roof and down on the back without getting hurt. The biggest danger when a car comes from in front of you is that it will break your legs, Yep. So that is why they jump up on the hood, and you can see he's standing almost like he's preparing himself. He's jumping up and down 3-4 times before the car actually comes. And also it looks very much like they speeded this whole footage up and cut away certain frames to speed up the whole procedure. You will also see that the video footage, there's one where you see that it's filmed when the sort of the attack starts. It's up the road a little bit, and it's once again one of these shaky video cameras where you have half of it down the street and then it looks up and follows the car. But when you listen to the sound of that one, you will hear that people are screaming already there, and it sounds like somebody has already been hit, but nothing has happened. I mean, he's still like 50, 60 yards away from the crowd. So that sound, I tell you, manipulated. That is not the true sound.
So, Ole, just to recap for the audience a little bit. So we're saying now that the area in which this happened was small, and it appears to be very contained. It had a parking garage. We had a drone, which just happened to be there. The pictures it was taking was obscured. It was blocking out the car so that you couldn't see anything. You see the car that it allegedly hit push forward. That you can see, but you cannot see the Dodge Charger itself. So we're getting a picture here where, at least in my view, it's looking like it's very controlled and making sure that only certain things are visible and everything else is taken off the table so that you only get what it is they want to show you so that they can build their storyline.
The way I approach a crime scene, if the official story is there, so I don't have to prove that or understand, that is very clear what they say have happened. So I come from a different point of view, saying, okay, if it would be a staged event, what would they be needing to be able to carry it out? And then I look for these things, and all of it is there. All of the different ingredients that would be needed for a perfect operation to be carried out are right there. So I find that highly suspicious, but I'm going to continue and get into more details here.
Okay.
So we have the license number on this vehicle is GVF 1111, which is a bit unusual. And also, when you see all of these footages, when license plates are very central in an image, many times in these operations, there's some weird message being forwarded through the license plate. They put clues of upcoming events. They're all kind of sometimes Freemasonic symbolism and stuff in these numerologies. So it's one thing that is a bit unusual, but then when they interview this this young man that is accused of having done it, when they interview his mother, they film her when she's in her garage. She's just got out of her car, apparently. She's in a wheelchair, and they make sure to film the license plate of that car as well. And that one is GVF 1122. So we got both of them Ohio plates. And with almost identical numbers, even though one is a Dodge and the other one is a Hyundai. So I think there's something going on with these license plates. And I've been looking into this GVF. There's one satellite company called GVF Satellites, I think it is, that was involved in one of these operations about one of these missing planes. And they were one company that tracked and said, I think it was MH340 or whatever the name of that flight was. They were involved in the official story about how that plane disappeared. So I'm not sure if that is a lead. I'm just mentioning it. And 1111 and 1122 could be dates, like 1122 could be the 22nd of November, which is the day when JFK was assassinated. 1111 could be the 11th of November. I don't know, so I need to look more into that. But I think that there is some kind of clue in this whole thing around the number plates.
Well, the numbers are all Masonic. So the GVF in Pythagorean numerology equals 17, and 1 plus 7 is 8. So during this attack in Charlottesville, Ole, we saw the numbers 6, 8, and 11 very, very prominent. I did some work on this. I haven't shown it to you, so I'm probably taking you a little bit by surprise here. But 8, 11, and 6, and the 6s and the 8s, folks, are used for deception. They use their hexcraft or their magic, and those two numbers are used a lot in order to deceive. So I'll just say that, and I'll let you continue on.
No, there's 8 is very, very dominant in the attack in Barcelona afterwards. It's 8, yes. 8, 8, 8, 8. Everything was 8. You had that on the London Bridge attack recently as well. 8 was all over the place and so on.
The girl that died in Charlottesville, Ole, her name was Heather Heyer or something like that, right? H. H is the 8th letter in the alphabet. 88. There you go again. Even the name of the person is strategically selected in order to reflect their numbers and their hexcraft or magic.
Back on a street level, if we look at the vehicle, in the vehicle registration information, you will see that it's a Dodge Challenger. No, sorry. Challenger from 2010. It's a coupe, I don't know how you say that in English. And it's got a sunroof on it in the papers. But the car that is hitting into the crowd, there's no sunroof on it.
Right.
Then also you will see that where the rear mirror is, when you compare images from the car that is reversing out of the crowd, and then if you compare to the car that was found and when this man was arrested, you will see that it's not the same rear mirror. There's also different types of tainting of the windows, and also rain sensors that are different on the two cars. There's also 2 dark stripes going down the hood on the car that was left or when he was arrested, which is not there, very clearly not there on the car that is hitting into the crowd. You will also see that the car that hit the crowd, there are chromed edges on the headlights in the front, but the car that is found afterwards, or also the car that is on these, the car that was found afterwards have the same color as the car. And then the car that is on the Facebook page of the guy who's been accused of this is yet another color. So I would say we're looking at least 3 different vehicles. And for instance, at the Martin Luther King assassination, involved in that conspiracy, there were 3 different Mustangs from 1966, 2 white and 1 pale yellow. That was there to be able to, or be part of framing James Earl Ray. He was driving the pale yellow one, but they were trying to, the whole plan was actually to get him killed right after they shot Martin Luther King. They had a sniper on the other side of the street and waiting to take James Earl Ray out just outside Jim's Grill, where they were also wanted to plant this evidence into his Mustang, but instead he took off. He got cold feet or whatever, and James Earl Ray took off before the assassination. No, sorry, after the assassination, but not according to the plan. And that just messed the whole thing up. What I'm pointing out is just that sometimes they use very similar vehicles, but it's not the same vehicle. And at the Charlie Hebdo incidents, if you remember that a few years ago, there were two terrorists that jumped out of a Citroën C3 from 2014, ran up on the pavement and is said to have killed this police officer I'm sure you remember these images.
Yes.
But that vehicle was from 2014. It had chromed side mirrors and some extra light in the front. The wheels were from 2014 as well, but the car that was abandoned and where they found the ID of the alleged terrorist, were a Citroën C3 from 2013 with black side mirrors and different wheels and no extra lights in the front. Very similar car, but not the same vehicle. So this is not the first time. They do this repeatedly. Then there's some very odd things as well, because what happened when it hit into the crowd, it just smashed up into the back of the car in front of it, but without the airbag blowing up in either of the cars. And by the way, it seems that I have not been able to see any drivers in the maroon van, nor in the car in between the two other ones. They're at the time of the impact. As far as I can see, these two cars are empty. And then the airbag does not inflate in the judge either. He then reverses very high speed going backwards and drives off in a way that normally only, people that are trained as bodyguards or in any of these alphabet agencies, where...
A stunt driver. Yeah.
Yeah, stunt driver is the same way. And also you will see that when he reverses and he's taking off, the whole front of the car is sort of on the right hand side is just it's loose, but it's still hanging onto the car. It looks very dramatic. But when you take it frame by frame by frame, when you see this car reverse, you will see that there's a wire attached from the car and to these parts that are hanging loose. So I tell you, that is just to make it look dramatic, I think, because there is no wire there as far as I know. That would be like...
Your car is not wired together.
Exactly. It's a steel wire,
Yeah.
and there's... and it's just not there. The thing is, maybe they've done it like this to make at least two of these vehicles look identical. I'm not sure.
Yeah, plus there was a shoe that popped out. He backed up and a shoe popped out from under the car.
There's a lot of these shoes again. Red shoes all the time. Red shoes, or shoes in different colors. But then also there is one still photo where you can see the face of the driver. A bit blurry, but you can still see it. You can measure the distance between eyes, nose, mouth, and so on. Doesn't match up with the guy that they blame it on, but it does match up with a military guy with almost the exact identical name as this guy, 32-year-old former veteran, and so on. So I don't know. I don't want to point this guy out, but he sure looks very similar to the other guy.
Plus his windows were blacked out. And you know what's interesting, Ole? I don't know what the law is in Virginia, but in many states, you can black out your windows or tint them to a certain degree, and that's it. When I saw the windows on the car, the first thing I thought was, well, those windows are really dark, dark. And I wonder if the tinting on that car was even legal. But in any case, just a side note there. That's what I noticed.
No, I totally agree. I mean, that was the first thing I thought as well, was like, whoa, because you can't see anything. And that is really dangerous in normal traffic if you have no idea if the driver, in what direction he's looking or anything.
Yeah, because here in North Carolina, you would not be able to tint your windows like that. You would not be able to pass inspection. And without inspection, well, you can't put your car on the road. So I just want to point that out to the audience. And again, I don't know what the law is in Virginia, but I can tell you that in a lot of states, North Carolina being one of them, windows that dark would not pass inspection and the car would not be on the road.
Then also, like sometimes when you see bad or low budget, even big productions in movies and so on, when there is a stunt trick that is being carried out in the film with a vehicle, they very often have the stunt driver have to do it like multiple times to get the maneuvers exactly right before he actually does the crash or whatever. And sometimes you can see the skid marks, like multiple skid marks, more or less identical on the street when you see the film. Here, if you look behind, when the car crashes in from behind, there's somebody filming from the top and to the right, meaning from that parking garage on the other side of the street. And you will see that behind the car, when the car is still there, you have these skid marks behind a diagonal going across the street. I would suggest that is someone that has done it before and then just stepped on it and turned around and gone back. You will also see there's one guy walking down Water Street towards the intersection. This is way before this happened. There's no one in the crowd. So at least 10, 15 minutes before it happened. And he is just walking down the street, filming for no apparent reason. And that is also always when I get curious, like why was the camera on? And while he's walking down the street filming, this Dodge comes up, passes him, and then stops. There's a traffic light. So the guy just continues walking, passes the Dodge, and when he does it, it sounds like the sound comes from this Dodge. It's sort of like a police siren, like woo woo, this type of sound, exactly when he passes it. There's no police cars anywhere nearby. Anyway, he continues walking. But when you see that this Dodge, when it's driving down the street, it's driving in exact the same black tracks that was there before. So it looks like, well, either somebody else had been doing it or it's the exact same driver. And the way when he did this before, he just stepped on it a bit.
So it sounds like, Ole, that there were some dry runs then.
I think that is a perfect expression. Yeah, dry runs. They've gone through this several times. And also one thing that is this is just mind blowing. This guy continues walking down the street. He comes down to the intersection, and this is before the crowd is there. It's before everybody else is there. And the maroon van is already there in the exact location that it was hit later.
Yeah, you know what was interesting to me, not to interrupt you here though, is the fact that that car, that Dodge, was even allowed. What was it doing on that street? You know, it just seemed very weird that unless it was an official car, unofficial business, like a police car, how was that guy even able to be there? You know, that's the thing that struck me. People don't ask that question, and they just look at it and this guy somehow made his way down that street, past all kinds of constraints and blockades and law enforcement and everything else. I don't know. So I'm just babbling on a little bit here, but it just seems really, really weird to me and something that should be questioned at the very least.
I totally agree with you. And then we have afterwards, you see this Dodge driving around with half of the car is sort of hanging to the side, flopping around. And he's driving down the street. There's police officers in the street as well. As far as I know, it was almost an hour before he was arrested. So he was driving around in this car with all of this, that is dangerous, if nothing else, with these sharp edges and sort of. And when he passes the police, they don't even look at the car. Nobody reacts.
Yeah. Very,
very, very odd, to say the least. Then, do you know, like when some of these photos are spread around, these photos that makes headlines everywhere because they are high quality, super duper photos that really sort of are spreading the message of terror. These photos I always really try to look into because often they are packed with different sort of hidden messages and all of these things. I don't know, but I'm just going to point a few things out. For instance, there's this Toyota Tundra, and you know Toyota, that is so part of all of these ISIS operations. It's always Toyota, 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 Toyota. Here we have a Toyota pickup that is parked there. I don't know if that is coincidence or not, but it is a black Toyota pickup. And on the back of it, there's a sticker that said something. No man is, let me see, it's very hard to write. It's a quote by Abraham Lincoln. And since this whole thing is so involved with American history and so on, I think that could be part of this psyop as well. I think no man stands so tall as the one who stoops to help a child. Then also the number plate of the car that is hit in the middle, the number plate says something like, God keep us. And then you have all of these different individuals that are flying in different directions. Very hard to see them when you compare to the video footage. So I really have to put big question marks around there as well. If this was in one take or two takes, then we have a totally different thing. There is a company called Crowds on Demand, which I find highly interesting. And it's a company where you can rent a crowd. So if you're a failed pop artist or a politician with no voters, or you want a riot or picketing or a rally or whatever you want, just go to Crowds on Demand and you can just rent your crowd. And the day when this happened, this company, it's crowdsondemand.com, had a gathering where they were looking for people, actors and so on, for a rally in Charlotte, but that's Charlotte, North Carolina, not Charlottesville, which is in Virginia. But the thing is, and I right away when I saw that it's not the same place, but at the same time very similar name-wise, I thought that, whoa, hang on, this could be a trap, for someone like myself, where they want to, for instance, that I go out and say, look at them, here they are, and then they just go, no, you just jump to conclusions. It's Charlotte, not Charlottesville. Yet again, it is only a 4-hour drive from Charlotte to Charlottesville, so it would not be impossible at all for the same crowd to be used from this company. And then you have also at least one witness that saw at least 6 buses, very similar light gray buses, arrive to Charlottesville. And out of these buses that was parked bumper to bumper to bumper, came out people with everything from riot gear to KKK t-shirts to Black Lives Matters. And there is some comments also made that there was people dressed like this Antifa thing. All of them coming out from the exact same buses that were rented by this, looked at least like it was, they arrived at the same time, identical buses. I mean, it's very strange that people from the KKK and Black Lives Matters would come on the same buses. And also people said that they were talking, like friendly and so on with each other. And then suddenly it was almost like somebody said, and action. And suddenly it was super aggressive, very violent. And also some normal people got caught in this whole thing and tried to get away. And then the police stopped them from leaving the area. They were sort of blocking them in the area where they could get hurt.
Yeah, Ole, just before you continue on, I just want to read something here. I looked up Crowds on Demand, and this is their website. Now, I don't know whether they were involved in this, but this will give the audience an example of the fact that these types of companies are out there. So this is what it says. Your home for protests, rallies, audiences, PR stunts, and celebrity events. Are you looking to create a buzz anywhere in the United States? At Crowds on Demand, we provide our clients with protests, rallies, flash mobs, paparazzi events, and other inventive PR stunts. These services are available across the country in every major U.S. city, every major U.S. metro area, and even most smaller cities as well. We provide everything, including the people, the materials, and even the ideas. You can come to us with a specific plan of action and we can make it happen. Or you can approach us with a general idea and we can help you plan the strategy and then execute it. We've made campaigns involving hundreds of people come to action in just days. We have a proven record of delivering major wins on even the toughest campaigns and delivering phenomenal experiences with even the most logistically challenging events. Our services are now available throughout the United States, so whether you're looking at doing a single event or a multi-city campaign, we have the resources available to achieve your goals. Sound interesting? Reach out to us by filling out the form below. Absolutely amazing. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but...
No, I thank you. I thank you, Mike, because this is the thing. It's in our face. And if you read between the lines, what is it saying? It is saying that we can do exactly this anywhere in the States. And I bet you if the money's there, it would be no problem to fly these crowds abroad either, which is exactly what I'm suggesting with this global tour of terror, that we are looking at small mobile units that are being transported around the world, carrying out these things.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know whether these guys are involved or not, but it's just to give the audience an understanding that it's out there, and there's companies doing this work that are in this business. So, when people scratch their heads and trying to figure out how it is that all these people can be pulled together, or how all these actors can come together, well, this is one possible answer, right?
Yeah, and there's multiple companies now, Crisis Solutions, Crisis Cast, so many different ones, crisisactors.org, you name it, where they're whatever you need, they can supply, everything including pyrotechnics, amputee, actors, crisis actors, makeup artists, anything you need. Anything, including making up the scripts of these simulations that they call them. But if you notice what this company Crowds on Demand, what it said on the website is that we have carried out, what did it say? Hundreds of things around the States. Did it say that on the website? Okay. So I ask you, did you know about any of them? Were you aware of any of these hundreds of events that they have carried out? Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, no. I mean, it says we've made campaigns involving hundreds of people come to action in just days. Yeah, they even have a separate tab for protests and rallies. Wow.
So I'm asking you, where have they done? I mean, this is a company that's been around for a while, so they must be somehow successful. So where have these crowds been used? What rallies have been faked for us to believe? Why would they do these rallies if not to get them out through media, trying to push forward their message, whatever their message is? I'm telling you, we have to be totally open and aware that we can be played at any time.
Wow. Here on the one page it says, a foreign government hired Crowds on Demand to help generate a positive reception for its newly elected leader during the UN General Assembly. So this is not small potatoes. The concern was ensuring that the leader was well received by a U.S. audience and confident for his work at the UN. We created demonstrations of support with diverse crowds. We also used the media, primarily local and national outlets, to bring more attention to these demonstrations, which led to a mostly positive portrayal. The crowds that we deployed drew in more supporters, creating a strong presence for this leader at the UN and an improved perception of him by the American public.
I rest my case, Mike. I mean, what can you say? It's in our face. There was one time many years ago, I was in Saloniki, a city up in the north of Greece, and that is not so far from the border to Bulgaria. And this was in the old times where Bulgaria was very, very poor. And when I was there, there was a big political rally, or not rally, but they had, it was before the elections in Greece. And so it was Papandreou, the sitting prime minister, the guy in charge. And then there was the guy who challenged him, Mitsotakis. And so I was stuck there for a few days, so I had nothing to do. I was just walking up and down the streets. And in the morning, before this big political meeting was going to take place, I started seeing this long line of buses coming, and out came Bulgarian people, and they were handed all of these signs and so on, but they were in the hundreds. I was like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I mean, they couldn't even speak Greek, these people, I think. But then in the evening, I was right in the middle of this. It's the biggest crowd I've ever been to. I think it felt like there was 1 million people in that plot. And Papandreou had such incredible support from a lot of Bulgarians, I tell you, because when I was walking around in the crowd, I heard Bulgarian all the time. So what did I see? What did I witness that day? And I think exactly this. They were very poor. They were just being imported for that whole thing, paid like a few dollars, to scream Papandreou, and that's it. And a free ride home again.
Yeah. Yep.
That's how it's done. It's an illusion, and we are being played.
Yeah, no doubt.
So ask yourself, what happened there in Charlottesville? What is going on? What is it they're trying to accomplish? And also there's one thing that I find very interesting. I think I mentioned it before in your program, that they have different color codes.
Yes.
And we spoke about that last time, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. And what I found this spring and summer is that here in Europe, and I would say also in the US, the color code is purple, somewhere between pink and purple. And you will see there was pink balloons at the Adriana Grande concert. There were pink balloons, lots of pink and purple at the funerals as well. At the London Bridge attack, the knife was purple. There are all of these news things where the subtitles, but sort of the graphics underneath are in purple, purple, purple. And then I found out a few days ago that George Soros has been funding what he called you had the green revolution in the northern African countries a few years ago. You had the orange one in the Ukraine where they took over there. And now this George Soros thing with the purple, where backing Hillary Clinton and all of these, where you see the purple, purple, purple. And here at the Heather Hayes funeral, the color code was purple. And I tell you, I'm not sure about this one, but Heather Hayes, I can't remember.
I think it's Hayer, Hayer. Yeah.
Hayer's mother is very like the mother of Christine Soto, Victoria Soto, Sandy Hook. She's older, but I tell you what you can do with makeup nowadays, white hair and some lenses. I mean, you just have to see normal movie magic. Please compare her with the mother of the alleged victim in Sandy Hook, Victoria Soto, whose sister is this Carly Soto, who's the girl that they have the photo of in all different false flags. She's the one screaming while crying while speaking in a cell phone. That's her.
Well, it's interesting, Ole, talking about her. There was an article going back, I guess, about around the middle of August, where her father, Heather Hayer, by the way, it's Heyer, I just looked it up, father of Charlottesville victim, says he forgives the white supremacist who killed his daughter. He hopes his daughter's death changes people's hearts, their thinking, and their understanding of people around them. I don't see, that's not even real. That's cartoon stuff, where if your daughter was killed and then you turn around like a week later and say, you know what, I forgive the guy that killed my daughter. As long as it brings about positive change, I'm okay with my daughter being dead. I mean, that's basically what it's saying, and it's absolutely ludicrous. It's not real world stuff.
It's standard in these operations. You will see it everywhere from Bataclan to whatever massacre that has been alleged massacre. At the Manchester one, you had Martin Heff, where his parents said that, it's so fantastic. He always wanted to be famous, and now finally he is. He was blown to pieces with a nail bomb just a few days before. I mean, does that sound likely to you?
No.
What I've been very confused around this whole thing, because as soon as it happened, they talk about forgiveness, kindness, love, not hate. I tell you what they're trying to do is pacify the masses. That is what I believe, so that the aggression will not be suddenly turned against them should anyone discover what's actually going on.
People who lose children are distraught
Yeah.
for a very long time, many months, for some people, for years, for some folks, a lifetime. And so for, this type of position to take place a week or so later, it's absolutely ridiculous. And, people need to wake up. I don't know. Anyway.
No, I totally agree with you. It's like, just ask yourself. I mean, if your son was blown into small little pieces of a nail bomb, would you right away be happy for him because now finally he's famous because he's making headlines all over and different pop stars are singing and them mentioning his names on their concerts?
Yeah.
For me, it's absolutely just bizarre.
Yeah, it's bizarro world stuff. Yep.
But you will see it right when these things happen, right after you will see the candles, the flowers, and then it will say there's a note saying love, not hate, and we will not give in to, to the face of hate. We will stand united in love. And, they're stealing these beautiful things that are the things that normal people stands for, that I stand for 100%, love, compassion, forgiveness, but it's not up to them to do it. They're just trying to diffuse this aggression coming up. Like I tell you, so many people are getting so angry, and then they think, oh, if the father can forgive him, I mean, who am I to be angry?
Right. It's his daughter, so he forgave him. I guess everything's good now. We can go back to sleep.
That is the way I interpret it. And this color code, this purple, please be aware of that, because I think this is it's a very easy way for the elite to send out these signals to their members all over the world, so they don't have to stay in contact all the time. It's just as soon as the color code is there, boom, okay, anyone reading the news all over the place will just be able to sit and smirk in the background and just, okay, another one of ours on track. Good one. Go, guys, go.
Yeah, they communicate with signs and symbols, Ole. You know that, not words. And so colors and numbers is a big part of those signs and symbols that they communicate with.
So, Mike, what is the symbolism of purple or the significance of purple?
I don't know what the significance is from a Masonic perspective, but like you, I have seen it pop up many times. Like you said, the Purple Revolution of George Soros. Also, after the election here in the United States, Hillary Clinton was all decked out in purple as well, right? So, again, it's some more research I have to do personally to understand some more about these the various colors that they use. Like I understand blue and red, black and white. I understand that. Orange, as an example, is used because the orange in numerology, the Pythagorean numerology, equals the number 33. So I don't claim to know every nuance of their symbols and the way they're communicating, but the patterns I'm seeing, and we should all be picking up on the patterns.
There was also a lot of purple at the funerals in Sandy Hook as well. And I think when you find out, please let me know, because I think there's a big significance to that color. It goes from pink to purple. And there's so many different areas. For instance, if I look in the media in different countries and so on, this color keeps popping up, like there's, in one image, for instance, there are like 4 people out of 6 with different purple t-shirts on or something like that. That makes me sort of like, whoa, hang on. So I've started reading, and it's anything from within health to medicine to all types of different areas you wouldn't think were linked to this, big pharma, food, and so on, but where there's these signals. And I think that is how they do it. They're just showing each other, this one is ours as well.
Well, it says here in the Masonic dictionary that purple, being a mixture of blue and red are 2 colors they use a lot, is to the Mason the symbol of fraternal union because it is composed of the color adopted for the Master Mason's Lodge and that adopted for the chapter of the Royal Arch Companions. So, if I understand this correctly, what it's saying, purple represents a unification of the Masonic fraternal order or brotherhood, if I'm reading this correctly. So, but I'll do some more work on it, Ole, and look into it, and I'll definitely get back to you on it.
Excellent. Anyway, so there's one sort of dot connector, even though it's not a very big one. But at the rallies in Charlottesville, there was one guy. You can see him. He's almost. It looks like he's being hit by police almost. He's turning away, and he's got a Barcelona FC, the football club of Barcelona, T-shirt on. And I know it sounds maybe a little out there, but this is how they do these signals, and especially through football clubs as well, to connect. So right after this happened, then there was a hit in Spain. And if you remember in many earlier shows, we've been talking about what the targets are nowadays. And the targets are in Europe, always NATO countries, because in my opinion, this is a NATO operation connected with the US, Australia, Canada, and the NATO countries in Europe. So one of the countries that are normally not so affected by this is Spain, but it was time to pop it up apparently. So here in Europe, it's the UK, France, Germany, Belgium, Holland. We have Denmark, Sweden, sometimes Finland, not very often, Turkey, and sometimes Spain, not very often. Portugal and Italy has also been on the radar lately, but these are the ones. And sometimes Poland is also being pulled in slowly but surely. So here in Spain, there's been a struggle for the independency for a long time from Catalonia, which is the northeastern region here in Spain. And that is exactly where Barcelona is. They got their own language. They got their own. I think they were up until before or just after the Second World War, they were totally independent, and then they became part of the Spanish Union. I'm not totally sure about that, but that is how I've understood it. And they've been trying to get free or free themselves ever since. So when they choose targets for these false flag operations, they normally choose something that has a very strong symbolic value or iconic value that has the national identity of the country or the location. That also something that has touristic value, so that will affect as many nationalities as possible, because people will say, oh, I was there last year, or something like that, so that they get involved as well, because it's always the emotional reaction they want from us, so that we will accept their very dark agenda, solution. So it's either that or centers for transportation. Airports, train stations, bus stations, but also vehicles or transportations, buses, planes, cars, you name it. So here, I also want to point out before I continue also is like the reason for all of these vehicle attacks that are, they're being repeated in a ridiculous scale here in Europe at the moment. The reason for that is they want us to see the vehicle as the problem. So that the vehicle is the problem, our reaction is, oh my God, we need protection, and the solution is so-called smart cars, driverless autonomous vehicles that can be remotely controlled digitally, and also this being a step closer to so-called smart cities and smart streets and everything, where everything is in control, their control.
Right.
So you will see. First, we've had almost a year of all of these incredible car attacks or people that have lost control over their car or bus or truck and driven straight into crowds. It's been in all these different, more or less all of these different NATO countries. There's been at least one, several in many of them. And here, once again, in Spain, it was a vehicle. It was a van. And lately also, most of the attacks have been carried out with rental cars or vans. I correct myself, rental vans. And so I've been asking myself, what is the reason why they always rent it? Is it for product placement, because they got the rental van big logo on the side right on in the center of thousands of photos of these vehicles? Is that the reason? Or is there another reason? And just a few days ago, I saw in the news in England that now they're going to go out and try and stop these attacks by make greater restrictions on who can rent a vehicle. So that is what that is about. You know, they're trying to shut down our liberties all the time in many different areas and just get us strangled more and more. That's the whole idea.
It's just chipping away, right? Little by little, Ole. That's what they do. It's very incremental.
Stepping stones, a little here, a little there, a little here, a little there, a little. So we don't see what's going on, but we will slowly be pushed into a corner. And once, if they succeed, once we wake up, it's too late. They've already closed the gate around us. So the thing is to become aware of all of these small movements that are just doom, 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 doom. Because if you compare, for instance, your life and society and the surveillance systems in motion before 9/11 and after 9/11, if you compare with today, I mean, it's a totally different planet. We're so controlled for our protection. And then when you start looking into all of these attacks and find out that more or less all of them are fake events, then there's no need for all of this control. There's no need for all the cameras, body scanners, anti-terrorist, whatever, anti-terror units and SWAT teams. No need for them. All of it based on lies and fake terror, making big bucks.
And think about it. It's only been, 16 years since 9/11.
It's incredible. It's incredible when you think of it, what has happened since then.
Yeah, I would say they've done in 16 years what they've been trying to do in the last 200. It's amazing. The progress that they've made in a short period of time is unbelievable.
Yeah, and all based on lies.
Yep.
I tell you, after all of these years, I am not sure I've ever come across a real terror event the way the official story tells us, nor a Muslim terrorist. I've never come across a real one.
Yeah, that's the thing. Once you start going back in time and taking a look at events that took place maybe 20 or 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and you start digging into it, you start to realize that, you know what? I don't know if this is real.
They did it then as well.
Yes, I know.
I'm super confused. You know, I've been looking into the Balkan Wars lately and some of these massacres, and I find video footage where I see, oh my God, they're dummies. These are not even real bodies. And, you know, I don't know why I didn't see it when it happened, but maybe I wasn't sort of aware of it in the 90s in the same way. But it's super easy to see now.
I wasn't aware of it, Ole. I'm not ashamed to say. Back then, in the 90s, I wasn't aware of it. I was taking these stories at face value. I was basically in the matrix, in it, and believing the stories that were coming out. And it wasn't until, you know, I figured it out. I can take a look back at these events and do the same thing that you're doing and have the same thoughts. Like, you got to be kidding me. This looks to be fake too. Or at least a large portion of it appears to be engineered and orchestrated.
Which is fantastic news, I think, because that just shows that if we take away these things, life is beautiful. People are beautiful. They're so friendly to each other. Nothing really bad is going down, at least not in the proportions we're being told.
Yeah, that means, and what you're saying, Ole, so the audience understands, is if they didn't put these things into play, if they didn't engineer them and stage them, these things wouldn't be happening, and it would be a whole different perspective of what the world is about. In other words, people are not shooting people. People are not running people over with trucks and cars. You know, it's just, just think about that a little bit, folks. Think about how, you know, they've painted the picture here and what it is that you're buying into based upon them painting that picture. I mean, it's not a real picture.
The CIA created what they called the strategy of tension in the 50s. And the idea with that was to inflict fear in modern society by random acts of terror, random acts of violence that could just hit anyone, anywhere, at any time. So that the whole idea was to make people very fearful and then welcome all kinds of protection. And they've been using this strategy of tension for years and years and years. And the more I look into different aspects of modern life, I tell you, so many of these accidents as well, airplane accident, bus crashes, train crashes, and so on, many of them are also staged events. So it's not only alleged terror attacks, it's also many of these accidents are not real. Not real. And I started my own podcast called Light on Conspiracies, and a while ago I interviewed a veteran in the American police force. He's been sort of like 24 years on duty or something like that. And apparently I was part of waking him up some years ago. His name is Alex Scott. And what he has done is an incredible study of the statistics when it comes to crimes and accidents and violent behavior and so on. And the more he's looked into it, it's just like fake, 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 and it just goes on and on. And he says when you see the statistics that are used for the taxpayers having to pay even more millions in protection, whatever it is, or uniforms or whatever it is, they need the numbers high to be able to demand these kinds of amounts of money and other things. These statistics, he says, then they're not trustworthy at all, because they're so twisted and so hyped up compared to what's actually going on. And he said, like, he normally, he opens the papers and he just start going through it, and he just like, oh, there's another one there and another one and there's another one. Because once you start seeing how they're pulled off, you will start recognizing the signs of them. And this is a police detective. This is not just anyone who is saying this. He said he's just totally blown away by the amount of accidents as well that are not real events. But who has the time to dig into every single one? That's what they count on, So it's happening, and it's always happening a certain distance away from where you are when you read it, so that you can't really go there and check out for yourself and so on. That is one thing I noticed when I was doing all this research on the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister Olof Palme. That was before the internet, and so I was buried in these archives and newspaper archives and so on. And what I found was that most of the bigger newspapers have different editions from different parts of the country. And so I found out that sometimes, for instance, in the edition for the north of Sweden, they were writing on something like totally bizarre, but from the south of Sweden. I remember this was like in the early 90s. And for instance, they were talking about a school where they were going to put in a new system with a handprint reader to stop the school kids to take an extra portion of meatballs and potatoes and whatever. Okay, and I thought, what? I mean, the cost of a few meatballs compared to this high-tech system, I mean, it's just totally unreal.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense, but it sort of affected my subconscious. And so I thought I need to check this school and find out what's going on. Turned out that it had not happened at that school. Then I checked the edition for the south of Sweden, and the exact same article was there, but then the town where they were talking about was a town in the north of Sweden. Do you see?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And it's the same when the Ebola virus or the Zika virus, it was all the time in a country far away from you. I mean, how many people knew people in Angola and could just phone up and say, listen, how are you doing down there? Or Honduras, or things all the time, so that you can't really go there and check for yourself. Then you go to these countries that we are being told where this happens, and they are then being told that it's happening somewhere else, but it has the same effect. We're back to the illusion, to the theater.
Yeah, that's what it is, Ole. It's all theater. It is, and it's hard for people to get their heads wrapped around it, but it is an illusion.
So here, let's go to Barcelona. So this is a city, very important city. It is a part of Spain that has been trying to liberate itself, and here, boom, they're being hit by this thing. So where did the attack happen? Was it in a location of iconic value, of value for the nation, of touristic value? The answer is super, super. Yes, yes, yes. The van that is said to have run down all of these people started at Plaza Catalunya. That is the main city center in Barcelona. Very important historical wise, and also connected to this freedom movement, Plaza Catalunya. Then it drove down a street called La Rambla, or Las Ramblas, which are two parallel streets, and in the middle of these two, there's a beautiful area with trees, and you got all of these street musicians and magicians and anything, you know. It's a beautiful place, and it's the place number one for tourists to go when they come to Barcelona. So that is exactly where the van started, and it stopped right on top of a super famous mural made by a world-famous Spanish artist called Juan Miró. The few photos that are of the van, it's standing right on top of this mural. So it started at the most important place in Barcelona and stopped on the second most place in Barcelona. What are the chances? Okay, so it said that this guy, who was once again, he left his identification in the car. That's very kind of him. And normally there are multiple nationalities among the victims, and very often the guy who's being blamed for it has either a double citizenship or has some dual connections to different countries. So he could be like Afghani but living in Germany, or Tunisian, French, or so on. And here he had a Spanish passport, but he was had Moroccan roots. So we look at the victims. They start with 13, and then it went up to 15. I don't know. It goes up and down. And then you had at least 100 injured. That is a lot of people injured by one vehicle. We check out the very few images that are of this van. Not a single drop of blood, nothing on it. Just the hood is smashed in. Otherwise than that, nothing. So 130 people or 113 people hit by a vehicle, many of them killed, and not a single drop of blood. It's the exact same as in Nice and in other attacks like this. Also, the authorities in Spain or in Barcelona, right away when this happened, they went out and said, do not upload anything on social media. No photos, no footage, no video, nothing. Do not do that. So what we're stuck with are very few photos, very few videos, at least, of this whole thing, and just like 2 or 3 photos of the van in total.
So they told people not to upload any images or video?
Yeah, right away. They banned them.
Unbelievable.
And so, let's see. Okay, we're back to, did it happen or did it not? Because also it can, even if it's a staged event, they can just drive into a crowd and kill people. I mean, that is possible. That is what happened in Charlottesville. I'm not saying that nobody got injured there, because it looked very brutal. I'm still not totally sure. What I know is it was a totally staged event. That was a not natural event, multiple vehicles. So here we're in Barcelona. We look again. And when you look at the video footage and whatever footage is there, there's no traffic, even though it's in the midday, rush hour, no traffic at all. No, and also in the background, no people on the pavement. I mean, these areas are normally packed with people, packed. But in the footage, we don't see anything yet. What we see are people running down the streets, sort of in the quarters around this area. But there's a trend over the last few months when police arrive. It was Stockholm and Paris, many the same way. When the police arrive right after these things have happened, instead of having a calming effect on the whole thing and saying, you stay low, stay there, I'll deal with it, you know, they are the ones that are starting the panic. They're running around screaming, run, 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 you know. So people in the hundreds starts running, and then other people join them running. And you will hear that is also what people that are being interviewed, that is exactly what they say.
So they created the chaos or additional chaos.
That's the one. I saw people running, so I started running. It's a classic. And here the Spanish police or people in Spanish police uniforms, just because they've got Spanish uniforms does not mean that they are actually real police officers. So we look at, there's the usual catwalk, I call it the catwalk, where somebody is walking around filming the victims. Blurry footage, most of it, camera held down and vertical. I think the reason why it's vertical, it's standard also, is that if it's horizontal, it would be easier for someone like myself to check out the surroundings, measure the distance to a light pole or a bush or a house corner, whatever.
Yep, you can see additional details. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Vertical, you see a tree, but you see the whole tree instead of seeing what's next to it. So anyway, so there's this catwalk where somebody walks up and down filming, and it's identical to so many other places where you see people lying in the street, and then you got other normal people gathering around them, helping them, and so on. But here, there's not 130, I can tell you, or 100. Around 15, as far as I've been able to count, 15 in total of people lying around. And some of them are what looks very much to me like dummies. There's especially one, either she has no clothes on her lower body, she looks like one of these things in a shop window that you just put down right there.
Like a mannequin?
Mannequin type of thing, yeah. Then there's somebody sitting next to a pool of blood. But the thing is, she hasn't got the wound. So where's the blood come from? Where did it come from? It's not connected to the ones there. Also, there's one guy sitting. You can see there's a bus driver passing by, filming through the window, and there's this guy sitting, surrounded by a few people, and in one angle, his leg is totally broken off. But in a soft angle, but almost like 90 degree, it looks awful. But then from a different angle where he's being filmed, his foot is totally okay and he's sitting drinking water. Doesn't match up. Then you have the 888, the dates, the time, everything up to 8.
Yep.
And then we have a bizarre thing also, this mural that is in the pavement in where the van was standing on top of it. If I've been told correctly, it is a very simplified painting of the Virgin, I think it's the Virgin Mary, I'm not sure, but Virgin Mary with Jesus child in her lap, and then she's holding an orange. But on all the different sculptures and paintings, she's holding that orange in a very specific way with two fingers, which I think is, I don't know if it's a Freemasonic something, but it very clearly has an importance, the way she's holding this, because it's been redone in so many different classical paintings and artworks and so on. And then there's one of the few photos of the guy who's said to have driven this van, is with him standing, smiling, with some kind of a pit bull next to him in a sofa, and then he's holding an orange with the exact two fingers like this. So I think that is also part of this whole psyop.
Yeah, it sounds like it. What are the chances that something like that would happen?
Then we have, speaking of chances, then we have a woman who's, she is just haunted by bad luck. Her name is Julia Monaco, and she has been in 3 months in 3 different places where these attacks have happened. That is pretty bad luck, I would say. And somebody tried to figure out the chances, and it was like 1 in 12.4 million to be in all 3 of these places. She was at the London Bridge attack, I believe. She was in Paris when that happened, and then she was in Barcelona in 3 months. So the same way they leave these clues sometimes, I would very much like to point out that her name, Monaco, if that is the clue for an upcoming one, should anything happen in Monaco, then please, just like we predicted the London Bridge one, the Westminster Bridge one, please let it be known that this was recorded on August 28th. So, we look a little more, and what do we see? We see that right after this happened, there was another attack in Marseille in France, and it said that once again it was a rental van that drove into some buses and so on. And the guy who was there, who took the photos and who started spreading this information on Twitter, his name is Amchai Stein, and he is I think deputy editor at the second biggest TV channel in Israel. I'm not totally sure about his title, but Amchai Stein. He was the one spreading out the information about this that looked totally staged in Marseille. You can't see anything of these photos except two buses, some parked cars, that's it. Some police vehicles, that's it. Nothing else. But this Amchai Stein, I thought I remembered his name. And right after Charlie Hebdo happened, the guy that was standing on the balcony filming these two guys that I mentioned before, that ran up to the guy, shot him, and then took off. The guy that filmed there, it is said now that his name is Jordi Mir, but in the beginning it was said that it was Amchai Stein that filmed that. So what are the chances of that guy? It's like they recycle these people, you know.
Yeah, and Ole, we see this a lot, though, where people who are working in some facet of the media happen to be the people that are filming, taking pictures, or eyewitnesses, right?
When it comes to eyewitnesses, they're either from film theater, some kind of background or connections there, media, or some kind of government connections.
Yeah.
When the Stockholm truck attack happened, 21 out of 24 of the people interviewed in media as eyewitnesses, I've found connections to one of these three groups. That when it comes to media, that can be on an international level as well. So they can, there were two from Belgium, one from Holland, I think, in Stockholm. And here we have also, when you see how these terror events are going around in a circular motion, there's so often that you have witnesses or victims from Australia. And it's either Sydney or Melbourne. And it's exactly in Sydney and Melbourne where the attacks have happened, the alleged attacks have happened. One of them that gave me the hint for predicting the Westminster Bridge attack and so on. So it's like, it's like you're just shoveling around the cards, you know, and remixing them and then hand them out in a different way. And we're there supposed to believe them.
Yeah.
And it's not only Julia and Monaco. I mean, you had Mason Wells, that guy from who said he was, I think, at three different, also the one of them in the Brussels right. Airport attack. We have one woman that I believe is one of the victims sitting on a bench inside the airport, phoning home. I've been sitting on the same bench. Well, very strange experience. Anyway, but she, as far as I know, is one of the witnesses that filmed some of the event in Stockholm. And one of the police officers that the Swedish Prime Minister was shaking hands with after this alleged Stockholm truck attack, this police officer, you can't find him in any footage or anything on location when it happened. Nothing. So I don't know why he shook his hand, but that guy is more or less identical to a guy at the Brussels airport attack, walking outside the airport in a pilot's uniform. And another one where it could very well be him as a Belgian firefighter. Do you see? So it's like they're just like, if they carry out an operation in the US, they will use people from abroad, so they won't be recognized so easy. If they carry it out in Sweden, they will use everyone except Swedes, and so on. If it's in Belgium, let's use everyone except the Belgium, and so on. That is what.
But they have a cast of characters. They have a troupe or a cast of characters that they select from It sounds like, right? So we're seeing some of these people, or we believe that we're seeing some of these people over and over again, and that's because they have a cast.
That's my interpretation of it. And I mean, we have one of my absolute all-time favorites. Her name is Victoria Munoz. She lives in Sandy Hook, and I mean, she was interviewed right after the Sandy Hook thing. Then she was in Boston as a witness. First, I think, to when the bombs went up, and then in the evening to the shooting of one of these brothers. Then she was at like just a Tarantino type of wedding in New Mexico where 4 people were shot dead while being married, and she was one of the witnesses there. I don't believe that happened at all. And then she was at the Oregon stand being interviewed there. What are the chances? And then she has her own website, her own blog, where you can rent her. She plays the clarinet and she reads poetry. She writes poetry as well. And you can rent her for your party. And she was the host for some kind of poetry competition just a stone throw away from Sandy Hook last year.
I don't know, Ole. Very, very strange. Very strange.
And I tell you, I want to pull this together a little bit more, or just while shooting in all different directions. Right after this happened in Barcelona, there was a second attack in a place, another city called, I think it's called Dardil, here in Spain as well, not far from Barcelona. And that is said that there was a second attack there. There was also an explosion where that leveled the whole house, but they're not really sure how that was connected. And then at first they said it was, and then they said it wasn't, and so on. But that exact city, Muhammad Atta and some other of the people that were then later accused of having been involved in the 9/11 attacks were exactly there, I think, a few weeks or a month or so before the 9/11 attacks. They were here in Spain being somehow, I don't know what they were doing here, but in that exact city. Can't say that it's for sure that it has anything to do with each other, but it is something that needs to be looked into. But I would suggest that very often when you see these terror attacks, they are being carried out in the same countries, but also the same police district and so on. And I would say that would suggest that this is where they can control people. And very often through the Freemasonic networks and brotherhoods and so on, that is how they control people. And so they just use the same locations, same people involved. And do you know, out of, we were talking about multiple nationalities. Do you know how many different nationalities there were among the victims that were involved in this in Barcelona?
No, how many?
There's 34 different nationalities.
Yeah.
And 34, that it does not involve any Africans, even though this is a place, with a lot of these African street sellers that go around selling sunshades and so on. And also no Pakistanis, which are very common on Las Ramblas as well. None of them were hit, even though they are said to be. And I give you one more. There's one, what I believe could be a real big witness to this whole thing. And he saw the van come, but he got totally shocked because he said there was no driver in the van. And he said there was no driver when the car just stopped. And somebody ran up, opened the door, so it looked like he had escaped. But he said there was no one escaping. There was no one in it. So I would suggest we might be looking at a remotely controlled vehicle here, which is very common nowadays where everything is digitalized. You will also see there's a front of the front of the car has been pressed in, and what do you call this thing in the front, so that if you bump it, you call it the bumper?
The bumper, yeah.
Yeah, okay. The bumper on that car is also sort of ripped off, just like in Charlottesville, and hanging to the side. But when you look at the footage of some of the victims, there's that part or a very big part of the bumper is lying next to them. So I don't know how that matches up. And that footage that was taken from inside the bus, if I'm correct, that is the bus that drove Crisis Access to and from the area. So just like in Woolwich and other events, they film from inside the bus as well to give more credibility and authenticity to it as well. But doesn't make it real, though.
Yeah. And going back to Charlottesville, you'd mentioned that the car that the Dodge crashed into, we didn't see a driver. I looked at that. I didn't see a driver either now. And they made it difficult for you to identify whether somebody was in the front seat of that I think it was a van, right?
There's a maroon van. No, that one has, guarantee you, no driver in it. Then there's this silver-colored one with a black roof. And that one in the middle between the two other vehicles. When the impact is there, I can't see anyone behind the wheel. But then, like 30 seconds or a minute afterwards, when they start filming inside the car, then there's a woman crawling across the seats, trying to get out on the other side. But I don't think she was there to start with. And there's also another woman. You have to check her out. Yellow, light green, almost like fluorescent kind of cap on, and she's got a black and white small checkered top on. She's walking around almost giving orders to the police or people in uniform, calling them to her, and then they're standing sort of waiting for her directions almost. And she's also got a clipboard with papers and a pen. So I think that she is some kind of coordinator to this whole event.
Yeah, I didn't see her, but the black and white checkered shirt,
It's very, very small squares, so it's not very obvious, and it's not like Freemason pumping it out there. No.
Okay.
But you will see her. It's like the camera is after the thing has happened, and the camera is sort of zooming from side to side, and it goes up, and she's standing right there calling the police to her. And I mean, do you think that normal police in a situation like that would just, if an old lady or a middle-aged lady said, come over here, they would focus on the victims and so on. They wouldn't go over and speak to her and be with her while this whole thing went on. But then the cameras, when she turns, she's looking straight into the camera, and it's almost like the guy filming say, whoops, sorry about that. And then he moves away, but it's too late. We've already seen her.
Yeah.
It's also the way they handle these victims, like many of them have water bottles, and I mean, nothing unusual with that. But at the same time, on a film set, when you have extras on the film set and it's a hot day, the person in charge of the extras go around and hands out water bottles. So they're always identical. And this is also what we see very often in these operations, is that next to the victims or the people helping them, you have identical water bottles. And the same here, when people are helping these poor people that have been massacred by this car, they won't let go of their water bottles. They're walking around with a water bottle at the same time comforting somebody who's and so on. It's
it doesn't look real. It just doesn't look real. That's how I kind of sum it up. I know it's probably an oversimplified view of it, but I look at it and I'm like, this is not how real people would operate or how real people would react. That's what I see, Ole.
I don't know. There's especially one woman behind when the Charger starts reversing. No, the Challenger starts going backwards. She gets stuck on top of the back, and then she gets squished almost in between the pickup and the car. She managed just by a millimeter or so to avoid it, but it looks really quite brutal. I don't know if they were real victims. I had to question them. But sometimes, these things, I mean, you have accidents as well, even if it's a prepared thing. You can see that at film shoots and so on. Sometimes people get hurt. And I'm confused. Once again, I know that it was a staged event, that it was multiple vehicles involved and so on, but maybe they just stepped on it and just went straight into this maybe rented crowd. I mean, so much easier for them to make it look real, and then off they went. But this Heather Heyer, I'm not sure if I have found her anywhere on the photos or in the videos. I don't know if she's supposed to be the woman with the turquoise top, but that woman looks a lot heavier than Heather. And also Heather, when you look at her, when you look into her, the same individual with the same parents has two totally different addresses, one in Charlottesville and one in Missouri, and also connected to government. So, and then this thing with the purple thing on a funeral where everybody had the color code was purple for the clothes.
Yeah.
But people keep asking me, but how is it possible? Well, I can just ask like that. How do you know the budget of NSA, CIA, FBI, these type of groups? They've got massive budgets, thousands and thousands of employees. How many do you know? How many do you know that is working for these agencies, that are working undercover, that are working and so on? And so if any one of them, for instance, will be relocated, very well paid, small plastic surgery, a change of hair color, some lenses in, and have a luxury life for years to come for being the victim in one of these events. The police officer that is said to have been shot in Charlie Hebdo in Paris there, turned out that he was actually not a police officer. He was a Mossad agent, and we managed to track him down to Buenos Aires, where he's doing fine. He's doing great. He was paid $666,000 for his part of this whole thing, and he was told not to return for another 6 years. So very symbolic sum as well, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, just rolling the sixes. Yep, that's what they do.
So here as well, the girl that was killed, there was a small 12-year-old girl in Stockholm that is said to have been killed by this truck attack, where I've had doctors to look at the photos of her body and they say that is not real. It's just not real. It turns out that even though her name is a very quite common name in Sweden, it's Åkerlund. Her name was Ebba Åkerlund. But that family name was connected to one of the biggest families of most powerful and richest families in Sweden. And so the question is, and they have also, residents on different continents and so on. So it could so easily be that this 12-year-old girl was just, moved to her family home in England, for instance, and then as well as being part of one of the victims in Stockholm. And then there's different photos taken of this girl, and of several of them, even though they're not taken at the same time, she's got like massive big butterfly earrings on.
Yeah, monarch programming.
There you go, because they're so big, and they're sort of like almost like they've been photoshopped in because they're out of proportion, that type of size.
Yeah, people just can't get their heads wrapped around that this stuff can actually get done, that it's funded, that there are agents or agent provocateurs, that there are folks that participate in this stuff. People have no idea of how deep programs like Monarch, MK Ultra, and so on, how pervasive it is. And, there's this whole other world that people know nothing about. And it's that whole other world of darkness and evil and with their agenda that's pulling this stuff off. And because good folks can't relate to it, they just don't believe it exists. It's just, this can't possibly be what you, Mike, and Ole are talking about, because this just sounds crazy. It just sounds like one gigantic conspiracy that can't possibly be pulled off. And that's how a lot of people think.
Well, I wish it was true. I mean, I would be very happy if these things stopped happening, But people say, but how can they pull it off right in the middle of a city center? There's people everywhere. How? People would notice it. There's some super interesting videos on YouTube I would recommend. It's called something like Press the Red Button or something like that. It was a TV channel that TNT, I think the channel is called TNT. And what they did was they put like a little or big column with a red button on it in the middle of a town square, somewhere. There's one from Belgium, one from Holland, Paris, Israel, and so on. Denmark as well. And what they've done is they've got hidden cameras around the town square, and they're just waiting. There's a big arrow also pointing towards the button saying, press the button. Or if you want action, press the button. So people are walking around. Nobody knows what's going on. It's just a normal day. And then somebody just drives by on a bicycle, sees the button and thought, well, why not? He looks around. I don't know why, but so he presses the button. And it just absolute mayhem begins within seconds. Suddenly there's an ambulance driving around the street corner. Police are jumping out. The people are starting to shoot. There's people are running out, gathering a victim, putting him in the ambulance. The ambulance takes off. The guy falls out the back of the ambulance. The SWAT team arriving. Suddenly there's a woman in a bikini on a motorbike driving, and a whole basketball team comes out, run around. People are just standing holding their ears, and just like, what the hell is going on? What is going on? What is going on? With all this shooting and this, and then suddenly there's this banner falling down the side of a building where it just said, well, if you like action, well, watch TNT or something like that. Another version where they actually, they press the button and boom, suddenly this whole gunfire starts, or shootout starts. And then one of the normal people are grabbed and thrown into a van, taken off, and they're driven to some kind of a parking garage where they get out and they're standing there. What happened? What happened? And suddenly it's like explosions and smoke bombs, and it's like a war zone, absolute war zone. And then suddenly it all stops, and down the banner saying, if you want more action, watch TNT. So here, that is exactly how it is carried out. That is exactly how it's carried out, but without the banner in the end saying that this was not for real.
Yeah, the other thing, Ole, I'd like to run by the audience is, how many times have you been driving in your car and you reach a certain road in your town or your city and it's cordoned off? I mean, you're not allowed to go there. It's, maybe it's blockaded, as an example. I mean, you don't sit there and say, well, let me get out of my car. Let me go find out why it's like that. You just drive around it and you just figured, well, something's going on. They're doing some kind of work, whatever. And, so you just, go on your way. It's the same thing. If you're walking around your town and there's an area that's blocked off and, you're not allowed to walk down that street or whatever. I mean, very, very few times does anybody ever say, well, I'm going to go, sneak down that road and I'm going to find out what the heck is going on there. I want to know why that street is blocked off. No, nobody does that. People just think to themselves, well, something is going on. There's some construction or whatever. And they just go about their business. And that's how it's done, in my view, is they take advantage of the fact that people are busy and running and really not that focused or maybe even caring. And they just go about their day, about their way, and that's it. So I just want to run that by people, because a lot of times folks will say, nobody, walked down that street even though it was blockaded. Nobody took a look. Well, look, turn it around. Would you have done it? I'm talking to the audience now. I know you would have, Ole. I know you would have done it. But the average person would be, no. The answer is no. You wouldn't do it, because you're going someplace and you have to be someplace. And so you're not going to take the time out to go do that. You're just going to go where you need to go. And if you have to get detoured, you'll take the detour and just do it.
But it's even more sophisticated than that sometimes, because, for instance, many of the latest attacks here, they're using buses as well to create car queues and then block it like that. So you're just in the city center behind a big bus. You can't see anything and the bus is not moving and you're sort of like stuck behind it. You don't get out and walk around and see what's going on the other side. But sometimes all they need is like 10 minutes, of where, and they've got helicopters above that has a total overview of everything. They just block the traffic from all different directions and then action, boom. And also another thing that we are very easily deceptive with is our uniforms. As soon as someone has a uniform on, you don't see their face hardly. You see the uniform, and you take for granted, even if it's in an overall with a company logo or a company van, you don't really notice it the same way. So this is also what they use, and you can see that being used in motion pictures all over the place. How the assassin, dresses in a police uniform, or bank robbers come in like workers. So it's standard. That is how it's done.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, especially when you see first responders and law enforcement people. They just, like you said, they just look at the uniform and that's that. It's kind of that authority thing that takes over.
It is, but these are the things that we need to become aware of, so that we get a curiosity going, and so we might be able to see and spot these things before they happen.
Yeah. What else, Ole?
Nothing else.
Nothing else. Okay, no, it's great insights. Great insights as always, and I like doing these shows because hopefully. I do believe people are starting to get it. More and more people are starting to get it and see these events for what they are. So, I always say this. I always tip my hat to you because you really pursue this stuff, Ole, and you really, really dig in. And a lot of what you're looking into is dangerous for you personally, because you're looking into areas where you're not supposed to be looking, and you're shining a light on it. So, again, hats off to you and thank you.
Thank you so much for acknowledging it. It's like it is a not very pleasant area to walk around in sometimes, but it's necessary. Somebody needs to do it. And I'm also surrounded by other researchers around the world that are doing an incredible job. So I take my hat off to them as well. The main thing for me is not who found out what or who connected the dots, but to do it, to get it out there in as big a way as possible. So if it would be okay for you, if I end with a prayer, but before then, I just want to say my website is lightonconspiracies.com. I've recently been hacked. We found out today that the donation buttons and buttons for sales of books and so on has been hijacked. So this is one of the reasons why I haven't received hardly anything the last few months. And I'm not funded by anyone or so on. So if anybody thinks that what I'm doing and aiming at accomplishing is important, then please consider donations. I've got Patreon. You just search my name on Amazon. I've got multiple books there, and newsletter and membership area. These are the ways that I can continue forward with this. If you or please consider any other researcher that you really respect, or also support Mike here, who's doing an incredible job and who has created this platform for this type of information to be spread. So that is of extreme importance, I think.
Well, thank you, Ole.
So the prayer comes as usual like this. May the entire universe be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May everyone, and especially the ones who heard us, be filled with peace and joy, love and light. May the light of truth overcome all darknesses and victory to that light. And there you go, Mr. Williams.
Well, thank you, Ole. Thank you again for coming on the show. And I'm going to have it out as soon as I possibly can, as I always do with your shows, because it's always it's current events. And the sooner we get it out, the better. And again, you have an open invitation, as you know, I don't have to say this, to come on the show whenever you deem necessary.
I just want to mention to you that I've been asked by Fetzer to write two chapters in a book that is already being produced about Charlottesville, Barcelona, and some other things. So it's really interesting, It's almost like something happens and we have a book being published within 2-3 weeks afterwards.
Oh, good for you. Good. So he's going to have the book out within, let's say, a month?
I have a deadline until the 10th of September.
Okay.
For my chapters. I don't know who else is writing it, but he always puts together the books with different researchers and so on, so different articles and so on, but in book form. So it's, I just think it's amazing that this type of information that normally took years to get out there are just boom, 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 right away.
Yeah, it's getting out quick. Yeah, very good, Ole. Excellent.
So I will continue.
I know you will. No stopping you.
Take care. Have a good one.
Bye-bye, Ole.
Bye.
And that concludes another Sage of Quay interview, and I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Links to my guests' websites and social media are listed in the show notes below. And as always, I'd like to thank everyone for listening and visiting the blog. You can get to the blog by typing in sageofquayradio.blogspot.com or simply head over to our hub website at sageofquay.com. Also, if you get a moment, please visit laboroflovemusic.com to listen to my album, Leaving Dystopia. And remember, live in truth and always serve creation. It's really that simple. See everyone next week. Be safe, enjoy, and God bless.